Hi all, this is Corinne from Spirea Herbs in Snail Trails Homestead. Today I'm going to be making some lacto-fermented cherries. I hope you can join me and check out this video. So my grandmother just came for a visit, and I think she drove all over town to find organic cherries for us. And we had just bought a whole bunch from the Amish down the road. I didn't have the heart to tell her that we kind of already had our fill, but I decided that this would be a perfect time for me to try fermenting some fruit. So fermenting fruit's a little bit different than your traditional ferments. Like say for example, these sour dill pickles that I have going here. These guys are going to sit on the counter for about 4 weeks, and you can already see the bubbles from the fermentation process. It's awesome. But like I said, they're going to sit on the counter for about 4 weeks, whereas fermenting a fruit is a much faster process. The reason for this is because on the skins of most fruits, there is already a lot of yeast. And so while when we normally make lacto-ferments, we're taking advantage of the bacteria that is in and around us, in the case of fermenting fruits, because of the yeast that the fruit naturally has, you want a much slower ferment because it will produce an alcohol very, very quickly. And also for this reason, when we normally do a ferment, our brine is salt water. In this case, we need a culture to kickstart the ferment because it is going to be competing with the natural yeast that the fruit has. And if we don't have some sort of a kickstart to it, like I said, you're going to produce basically an alcohol, which if you're making mead or wine, that's fine. But in this case, we're doing a lacto-fermented fruit. So the culture I'm going to be using today is whey, because I've just started making our own yogurt again. And so because we like the thick yogurt, we like Greek yogurt, we strain it out, and what you're left with is this really nice whey. If you don't have whey, you can buy starter cultures, or you can use the brine from an existing ferment that you have. Like we have fermented kohlrabi in the fridge right now, or fermented asparagus, all those types of things. So you can use the brine from that as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make the brine. So in this case, we're using 2 cups of fruit, and you can substitute cherries, I'm making cherries. You can substitute raspberries, blueberries. There's a lot of information online about not using strawberries. So do your own research and decide whether you want to do that. You can do cranberries, blackberries. So you can really substitute any fruit for this. So I'm using 2 cups of fruit. So in my brine, we're going to be doing 2 tablespoons of whey. So that's what I'm adding right now. And it didn't quite fill, so I'm just going to add a bit more. So 2 tablespoons of whey to a 1/4 teaspoon of a good quality salt. Okay, you don't want cheap salt in this particular process, so I'm using pink Himalayan sea salt. You can use a natural sea salt. I think in the States, folks call it Redmond salt. You just want a good quality salt that's high in minerals. You're also going to be using 2 tablespoons, in this case, honey. You can use a sucanut or an organic cane sugar, whatever you've got around. But I'm going to be using honey in this case, raw local honey. And no, it will not interfere with the fermentation process, unlike things like kombucha and stuff where it would interfere. In this case, the honey adds sweetness to your ferment, which again is going to kickstart it. We don't want to produce an alcohol accidentally, or maybe you do want to produce an alcohol. But if you don't add kickstarters like your whey and maybe a bit of sweetness to it, you're just going to end up with fizzy fruit. Just going to tuck those over to the side. And then the last little bit is 3 tablespoons of water, more or less. So in general, whenever you're making a ferment, you want to make sure that your vegetables, your fruit, whatever it is that you're making is below the brine. So if you need to add a little bit more water, go ahead and do that. Make sure you're using good quality water, no tap water here. Chlorine and fluoride both interfere with the fermentation process, so you need either spring water, filtered water. If you can filter your tap water to remove both of those items, then it's fine, or really good quality well water. I'm going to add this to the brine, and then I'm just going to whisk away. It's the honey that's going to be the hardest to kind of meld into this process. And once your brine kind of all looks uniform, which in this case it does, you want to put your cherries in your jar. And I'm just going to scoot around here for one sec. I've got a cameraman today so you guys can hear me, not see me. It's awesome. Just makes my life a little easier because I'm incredibly messy. My husband can attest to this. So you want to fill your jar with your fruit, and it's not going to fill all the way, but that's where things like fermentation weights are going to come in. So I did a test run already. I tried putting this in a 500 ml mason jar and it overflowed. So I just went with the 1 liter because that's what I have. And you just want to make sure again that your brine is covering your fruit entirely. I'm just going to pour the brine over it, and in this case it's not nearly enough, so I'm going to make a second or third batch of brine and I'll be right back. Alright, so I went ahead and I made a bunch more brine. I was kind of going based on some stuff that I found online and was piecing together recipes, so it clearly wasn't enough. So we've got 2 cups of fruit, and the total amounts are going to be 6 tablespoons of whey, 6 tablespoons of honey, 3/4 of a teaspoon of Himalayan sea salt, and then 9 tablespoons of water. So I know those numbers seem cumbersome. I am going to write an accompanying blog post. The link will be below, so you can check that out, and I'll do all the conversions into cups for you guys, so it'll be nice and easy. So I'm just going to pour the rest of my brine, and I'm losing some cherry or some salt here, so I want to make sure I get all the salt in the jar. And I'm going to use a chopstick's one of my favorite tools. You want to make sure you get all the air bubbles out. And again, this still doesn't quite look like enough. Oh, that's because I actually didn't add the water. Suddenly the world makes sense again. There we go. That was the extra water from my brine. And so this is just making sure that all of my cherries are covered with the brine. And this is where my fermentation weights come in. Now you don't need to use fermentation weights. You don't need to use, so I use mason tops, pickle pebbles, and pickle pipes. It's completely not necessary to do this when you're making ferments, but they've made the process so easy that I absolutely love supporting this company and using them. The weights, so this is one of their pickle pebbles. Their monkey man has come in to see what Mom's up to. So I don't know if I'm showing that correctly. There we are. And it's a fermentation weight. And what I like, I bought the kit this time, and it actually has little handles, which makes it so much easier to put the weight in. And so what this does is I put this in, and it keeps all of my cherries below my brine. So I don't have to worry about any fruit floating up to the top. I would use this if I'm making sauerkraut, pickles, fermented asparagus, any of these things, because if anything is above the brine, it could mold. And we really don't want moldy cherries. It seems pretty disgusting. So the fermentation weights, the fermentation weights help to keep things below the brine. The pickle pipes go on top of your jar. And what they do, have you washed your hands? Oh, you have to wash your hands first. Off he goes. The pickle pipes, they actually have like a little opening on the top, a little tiny hole, and this allows all the carbon dioxide to escape, so you don't have to burp your jar, but it also prevents bacteria from getting in. So Mason Tops has made this process completely foolproof. Oh, he's back. That was a very fast hand washing. So what do you want to help me with? Just put the lid on. Okay, so can you put it on and give it a couple, you gotta screw it. It's a twist. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So like I said, this ferment's going to stay on the counter for a much shorter period of time. We're talking 1-2 days tops. And you're going to start to see some bubbles. At that point, you can take a fork, taste one of your cherries. They should be sweet and tart and almost a little effervescent from the fermentation process. Then I'm going to switch this out for a regular mason jar lid, and I'm going to put it in the fridge, and that's going to dramatically slow the fermentation process down. And you want to consume within about a month, I'd say. So our plan, because I've started making homemade yogurt again, our plan is to enjoy these cherries with our homemade Greek yogurt and maybe some granola. This is Capri, by the way. Catherine's making her first appearance on YouTube. It's Monkey Man's dragon. Anywho, these are lacto-fermented cherries using whey, a little bit of Himalayan sea salt, some honey, and good quality water. Like I said, if you don't have whey, you can use a brine from a previous ferment if you'd like. Like I said, the blog post is going to be below, as well as a bunch of links to the pickle pipes, pickle pebbles, and all the stuff that we love to use around the homestead, as well as a bunch of social media links. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that jazz. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, folks, I just wanted to do a quick add-on to the measurements that I was doing. So I've just fermented some currants. And as it turns out that 2 tablespoons of whey, 2 tablespoons of honey, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of water works just fine if you mash the berries, which many of the fermented fruit recipes call for. They call for either using like a, like the pickle packer that comes with the Mason Tops kit, or a muddler, or just your fist to kind of mash or sort of mush the berries down and then pour the brine over top of that. So because I didn't do that with the cherries, I did end up needing quite a bit more. So if you choose not to mash your fruit, which you can absolutely skip that step, you'll need more brine. But if you fill your 2 cups of fruit in your jar and then you really kind of pack it down and then pour your brine over, then the measurements I gave you originally will be just fine. So I hope that helps. I hope you guys are enjoying fermenting fruit. We hope to do some blueberries this year, and we have ever-bearing raspberries. So we're actually going to get our best crop in the fall. So I hope to try it with raspberries as well. Thanks so much for watching. This is Corinne from Spirea Herbs and Snail Trails Homestead, and I'll catch you on the next video.